when a reckless biker cruelly kicked a dog for fun. Little did he realize who the dog's owner was, none other than Keanu Reeves. What started as a peaceful afternoon stroll quickly spiraled into a dramatic showdown, proving yet again that messing with a man's dog is a mistake you don't want to make. The concrete alleys of Brooklyn Heights were sweltering, trapping the morning heat amidst the bustling film set of John Wick. The air carried the mix of sizzling asphalt and the faint aroma of street food from nearby vendors. Equipment cluttered the area, with cables sprawling like lazy serpents on the ground. "That's a wrap for this scene, folks," the director's commanding voice pierced through the clamor. "Lunch break. 1 hour. Back here sharp for the next shoot." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the exhausted crew, who had been tirelessly working since dawn. Conversations about lunch plans buzzed around as they dispersed near the catering truck. "Hey, Keanu," someone called out, grinning. "We're heading to that new deli on Atlantic Avenue. Care to join?" Keanu turned toward the voice, a friendly smile lighting up his face. But before he could respond, his attention shifted to Buddy, the Pitbull co-star of their scenes. Panting in the heat, the dog's tongue lolled out, searching for any respite from the blazing temperature. "You all go ahead," Keanu replied, still focused on Buddy. "I think this guy here needs a walk and some care. He looks like he could use it." The dog handler, a wiry man clutching a clipboard, hesitated. "Mr. Reeves, that's my job. I'll handle it." Keanu raised a hand, his expression sincere. "I'd like to, if that's all right. It'll help us bond for the scenes ahead," he said thoughtfully. "Besides, I've always wondered what it's like to own a dog, even if it's just temporary." After a moment's pause, the handler relented, nodding. "All right, Mr. Reeves. Just be cautious. Buddy's a sweetheart, but he's got his quirks." Keanu smiled and got to work. With the leash clipped securely, a collapsible water bowl tucked into his jacket, and waste bags stashed for good measure, he knelt beside Buddy. "Ready for a walk, Buddy? Let's find some water and shade." His warm tone elicited an eager wag from the Pitbull, who momentarily forgot the oppressive heat in favor of the actor's attention. "See you in an hour," Keanu called out to the crew, giving a small wave as he and Buddy embarked on what should have been a simple stroll through the bustling streets of Brooklyn Heights. What awaited them, though, was far from ordinary. As Keanu and Buddy wandered through the sun-drenched streets of Brooklyn Heights, the midday heat radiated off the pavement in shimmering waves. Buddy's panting grew heavier, his need for water becoming increasingly urgent. Keanu's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, searching desperately for a water fountain or a dog-friendly spot. Turning a corner, they came across a weathered building with a sign that read Iron and Ash. The faint rumble of motorcycles filled the air, and a row of shiny bikes lined up outside like sentinels guarding a fortress. Keanu's grip on Buddy's leash instinctively tightened as he surveyed the scene. The bar exuded an intimidating toughness, a stark contrast to the trendy cafes and boutiques nearby. Just as Keanu debated moving on, a glint of metal caught his eye. A public water fountain stood tucked between two motorcycles. Relief washed over him as he guided Buddy toward it. Keanu crouched down, pulling the collapsible water container from his jacket and carefully filling it. Buddy eagerly lapped at the cool water, his tail wagging with newfound energy. While Buddy drank, Keanu stepped aside to let a burly man with intricate tattoos covering his arms use the fountain. The man's rough exterior softened as he glanced at the dog. "Nice Pitbull," he said in a gravelly but friendly tone. "People always misjudge them, you know, same as us bikers. Treat 'em right, and they'll be loyal to a fault." Keanu nodded, appreciating the insight. "You're spot on," he replied, his gaze thoughtful. "There's always more to someone, or something, than meets the eye." As their brief exchange ended, a waitress emerged from the bar, her apron stained but her demeanor friendly. Her face lit up when she saw Buddy. "Oh, what a handsome boy!" she exclaimed, kneeling to offer her hand for him to sniff. Buddy responded with a gentle lick, his tail wagging enthusiastically. She chuckled, scratching behind his ears. "Kinder than most of the men inside, I'd bet," she joked in a hushed voice. Keanu smiled at her light-hearted comment. After ensuring Buddy had his fill of water, Keanu folded the container and stowed it back in his pocket. "Thanks for the warm welcome," he said with a nod before he and Buddy continued their walk. As they moved away, raised voices caught Keanu's attention. He turned to see the waitress locked in a heated argument with a group of bikers. Though she stood her ground, her defensive posture betrayed the tension. "I told you yesterday, you're not welcome here anymore," she said firmly. "The boss was clear. After last time, you're banned." The bikers towered over her, their faces twisted with anger. One hulking figure with a shaved head stepped closer. "Move aside, sweetheart," he growled, "or we'll move you ourselves." The situation escalated quickly, and Keanu hesitated, torn between helping the waitress and keeping Buddy safe. Just as he considered stepping in, another group of bikers emerged from the bar. These men positioned themselves protectively around the waitress, their leader speaking in a low, commanding tone. "You heard the lady. Time to leave." Recognizing the brewing tension, Keanu decided to avoid the conflict. With a steadying breath, he quietly led Buddy away. The tense energy of the encounter lingered, and as Keanu walked, he couldn't shake the unease creeping up his spine. The undercurrent of hostility he had just witnessed left him wondering what kind of neighborhood they'd stumbled into. Keanu and Buddy soon found themselves wandering into a quieter part of the neighborhood, far removed from the chaos at the bar. The tree-lined streets offered a welcome break from the relentless sun, their shade casting cool patterns on the pavement. As they rounded a corner, a quaint cafe came into view. Its outdoor seating, adorned with wrought-iron tables and chairs under a canopy of string lights, radiated an inviting calm, a perfect spot for a quick rest. Keanu guided Buddy to an empty table on the shaded patio. Unclipping the leash, he gestured to an extra chair beside him. "Come on, boy, take a load off," he said warmly. Without hesitation, Buddy hopped onto the seat with surprising grace, earning admiring smiles from a few nearby patrons. A waitress soon approached, her name tag reading Maggie. Her professional demeanor softened instantly when she noticed Buddy. "Well, aren't you a handsome gentleman?" she cooed, addressing the dog. Keanu chuckled at her enthusiasm. "He certainly is. I hope it's all right that he's up here with me." Maggie waved dismissively. "As long as he's well behaved, we're happy to have him. Now, what can I get for you?" Keanu glanced at the menu briefly before replying. "I'll take a coffee and a steak sandwich." "Oh, and can I get an unsalted steak portion for my friend here?" He nodded toward Buddy, who perked up at the mention of food. "Absolutely." Maggie jotted down the order, flashing a wink at Buddy. "One steak sandwich and a special treat for our distinguished guest coming right up." As Maggie disappeared inside, Keanu leaned back in his chair, pulling out a script from his jacket. He spread it across the table, alternating between reviewing his lines and giving Buddy affectionate pats. "Hang tight, Buddy," he murmured. "Food's on the way." When Maggie returned with a steaming cup of coffee, she assured him that the rest of their order would arrive shortly. Keanu was just about to take a sip when the tranquil scene was shattered. A burly man in a biker vest stomped past their table, sneering. "Filthy animals," he muttered loudly, his disdain clear. Then, before Keanu could react, the man's boot lashed out, striking Buddy in the side. The Pitbull let out a pained whimper, which quickly turned into defensive barking. The commotion drew the attention of everyone on the patio, and the once peaceful cafe was now a scene of chaos. Keanu shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His body was taut with anger, his protective instincts kicking in as he positioned himself between Buddy and the aggressor. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Keanu demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The biker hesitated, momentarily startled by Keanu's swift reaction, but his aggression quickly returned. He spat on the ground, his face twisted with disdain. "Control your beast," he snapped. "How dare it show its teeth to a man?" Keanu's hand rested gently on Buddy's back, soothing the distressed dog. "Buddy only reacts to threats," Keanu said, his voice steady despite his simmering anger. "You provoked him. He's never hurt anyone unless they hurt him first." The biker sneered, his contempt evident. "Coward dog. Coward owner," he taunted. Keanu's composure slipped momentarily as he grabbed the front of the man's vest. Gasps rippled through the patio, tension thickening in the air. But just as quickly, Keanu caught himself, releasing the vest and stepping back. The biker, sensing an opportunity, snarled a threat. "You'll regret this, both of you." He turned and stomped away, leaving the patio buzzing with uneasy energy. Keanu knelt beside Buddy, checking him for injuries. Relieved to find none, he sighed heavily. As the aroma of freshly grilled steak reached him, Keanu tried to shake off the confrontation and refocus on the meal ahead. "All right, Buddy," he said, placing the dog's plate on the table. "Let's eat. We've earned it." Despite the tense encounter, Keanu and Buddy shared a quiet moment over their meal. But in the back of Keanu's mind, a lingering unease persisted. This wasn't over. Somehow, he knew their paths would cross with the biker again before the day ended. Keanu's thoughts kept returning to the biker and the ominous threat as they finished their meal. Despite the relative calm of the cafe, his mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that things were far from settled. Once they were done, Keanu looked at his watch and realized with a start that their break was nearly over. "Looks like we need to get going, Buddy," he said, patting the dog affectionately. "But first, I've got to hit the restroom. Mind waiting here for me?" Buddy tilted his head, seemingly considering the question, before settling back into his chair with a contented sigh. Keanu couldn't help but smile at the dog's almost human-like response. He carefully clipped Buddy's leash to the table leg and waved to Maggie, who was passing by with a tray of drinks. "Would you mind keeping an eye on Buddy for a moment? I'll only be a few minutes." Maggie nodded with a warm smile. "Of course, no problem at all." Keanu made his way inside the cafe, weaving through the tables toward the back, where the restroom sign hung. To his dismay, there was a line, and the pressure in his bladder made him hesitant to wait. He briefly considered returning outside, but his urgency won out. He would just have to hurry. Minutes passed slowly as Keanu stood in line, his foot tapping impatiently. A nagging unease crept in, but he shook it off. Buddy was perfectly safe with Maggie. Still, a part of him couldn't escape the feeling that something was off. He dismissed the thought, chalking it up to his worry. Finally, after what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 minutes, Keanu emerged from the restroom. He rushed back outside, eager to grab Buddy and head back to the film set. But as soon as he stepped onto the patio, a cold chill ran down his spine. Buddy was alone at the table. Maggie was nowhere to be seen, and that wasn't what alarmed him. It was the sight of Buddy, clearly in distress, his body heaving, struggling to breathe. Keanu's heart raced as he rushed to Buddy's side. The dog was choking, his body convulsing as he fought to clear whatever was lodged in his throat. Panic surged through Keanu, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Water," he called urgently. "I need water, fast." A nearby waitress, not Maggie but a younger woman with a name tag reading LA, rushed over, bringing a bottle of water. Keanu quickly helped Buddy drink, holding his jaw steady as the water flowed in. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened, but then Buddy managed to expel whatever was blocking his throat, and the crisis passed. But Buddy still seemed off. His eyes were unfocused, his tail drooping, and Keanu's concern deepened. Just then Maggie returned, breathless and clearly upset. "I'm so sorry," she said. "The kitchen needed me, but I asked Elle to keep an eye on him." Elle looked sheepish. "There was a man here," she explained, her voice shaky. "He seemed friendly. He fed Buddy a sausage. I thought it was okay." The realization hit Keanu like a punch to the gut. The man, the same biker who had kicked Buddy earlier. He'd fed him something, and now Buddy was sick. "Is there a vet nearby?" Keanu asked urgently, his eyes darting between Maggie and LLA. "There's one a few blocks away," Maggie said, pointing down the street. "Take a left at the next intersection. You can't miss it." Keanu didn't hesitate. He left a generous tip on the table, handed over money for the water, and prepared to leave. But as he stood up, Buddy suddenly collapsed. The dog's legs buckled beneath him, his condition deteriorating rapidly. Keanu's heart pounded as he scooped Buddy into his arms, adrenaline giving him the strength he needed despite Buddy's weight. With a swift nod of thanks to the waitresses, Keanu bolted toward the veterinary clinic, praying it wouldn't be too late. Keanu's heart pounded as he rushed through the streets of Brooklyn Heights, Buddy's heavy body cradled in his arms. The urgency of the situation was clear in the speed of his movements, his focus razor-sharp as he navigated the city. Passers-by stopped and stared at the sight of him carrying the large Pitbull, but Keanu didn't notice. All that mattered now was reaching the veterinary clinic before it was too late. The 3 blocks felt like an eternity. Sweat trickled down his forehead, a mix of exertion and fear. Buddy's condition seemed to worsen with each passing second, his whimpers growing weaker as his body became more limp. Keanu's steps grew more frantic as the clinic came into view. The white building with its Blue Cross sign stood as a beacon of hope, and Keanu pushed forward, his pace quickening as he neared the door. "Please, I need help." Keanu's voice cracked as he burst into the clinic, the desperation clear. "My dog's been poisoned." Within seconds, the staff sprang into action. A woman in scrubs, identified as Dr. Harper by her name tag, quickly took charge. "Bring him this way," she directed, leading Keanu to an exam room. "Put him on the table." Keanu gently laid Buddy on the cold metal surface, his hands lingering for a moment on the dog's fur. Dr. Harper immediately began her examination, moving swiftly but with precision. "Can you tell me what happened?" she asked, her eyes never leaving Buddy as she checked his vital signs. Keanu rushed to explain. "Someone gave him a sausage. It must have been laced with something. He started choking, then collapsed." Dr. Harper nodded gravely. "His pupils are dilated, and his symptoms are consistent with poisoning, likely drug-related, given how quickly it's affecting him." Turning to a nearby nurse, she gave her orders. "We need to run blood tests immediately to identify the substance and administer an antidote." Keanu, his worry palpable, nodded quickly. "Do whatever you need to do. Just save him." As the nurse rushed to carry out the tests, Dr. Harper outlined the plan. "We'll start with activated charcoal to neutralize the poison," she explained. "We'll also put him on 4 fluids to flush out the toxins and stabilize his condition." Keanu's mind was racing, his concern for Buddy only deepening as he processed the situation. "Just save him," he repeated softly, his voice full of raw emotion. The medical team worked swiftly, but Keanu found himself being ushered back to the waiting room. His anxiety only grew as he sat in the sterile, quiet room, the minutes dragging on as he awaited updates. His mind drifted to the events that had led him here, the attack on Buddy, the dangerous confrontation with the bikers, and the disturbing realization that this was far from an accident. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and dialed the director's number. The conversation was brief but tense. Keanu explained the seriousness of Buddy's condition, his voice cracking as he spoke. The director's frustration with the delay was clear, but it quickly gave way to concern. "Don't worry about the shoot," the director assured him. "We'll reschedule. Just take care of Buddy. Make sure you document everything for insurance or legal reasons." Keanu ended the call, already arranging for the dog handler to come to the clinic. He knew they needed to document everything properly, both for the production and for potential legal action against the person who had poisoned Buddy. The responsibility weighed heavily on him, but as he sat in the waiting room, he couldn't shake the feeling that this day had spiraled completely out of control. What had started as a simple walk had turned into a fight for Buddy's life, and somewhere out there, the person responsible was still free. Keanu's thoughts turned dark as he wondered whether justice would be served. He had always prided himself on staying calm and choosing diplomacy over violence. But in that moment, as he waited to hear if Buddy would survive, a desire for justice, maybe even vengeance, began to rise within him. He had never felt this way before. Time seemed to drag on endlessly as Keanu waited, each minute ticking by like an eternity. The sterile scent of the clinic, the soft murmurs of other pet owners, and the quiet efficiency of the staff all blended into a surreal haze. Keanu could barely focus on anything other than Buddy, wondering if the dog would pull through. The tension in the waiting room was thick, but there was little to do now except wait and hope. Finally, around 1:42 p.m., after what felt like hours but was probably only around 30 minutes, Dr. Harper emerged from the treatment area. Her face was serious but not grim, which Keanu took as a hopeful sign. She approached him, clipboard in hand, her tone both professional and compassionate. "Mr. Reeves," she began, sitting down next to him, "I have the blood test results." Keanu's heart raced as he leaned forward, desperately needing to know. "How is he? Is Buddy going to be okay?" Dr. Harper nodded slowly. "Buddy's stable for now, but he's not out of the woods yet." The blood tests revealed a combination of substances in his system, some kind of powerful narcotic mixed with chemicals similar to rat poison. It's a toxic mix that could have been fatal without quick intervention. Keanu's blood ran cold as the gravity of the situation sank in. This wasn't just a cruel prank. It was a calculated attempt to harm or even kill Buddy. "The good news," Dr. Harper continued, "is that we caught it early. The activated charcoal has neutralized much of the poison, and the 4 fluids are working to flush it out. We've also started him on antidotes for the identified toxins." Keanu let out a shaky breath, relief washing over him. "Thank God," he murmured. "What happens next?" Dr. Harper outlined the treatment plan. "We'll keep him under observation for the next 24 hours to monitor for any complications. He'll be on medication, mainly anti-nausea drugs and liver protectants. He's also on a special diet to aid his recovery." Keanu followed Dr. Harper as she led him to Buddy's recovery area. There, lying on a soft bed with various monitors attached to him, was Buddy. Despite the tubes and wires, Buddy's tail gave a weak wag when he saw Keanu, and a lump formed in Keanu's throat. "Hey, Buddy," Keanu whispered, kneeling down to meet the dog's eyes. "You're gonna be okay. We got the bad guys." Dr. Harper smiled at the bond between the two. "If there are no complications, Buddy should be able to go home tomorrow. He'll need to continue the medication and special diet, but his prognosis is good. Keanu nodded, making mental notes. I'll be here first thing in the morning. My hotel's nearby, so I can be here quickly if anything changes. As they discussed the details of Buddy's care, Keanu's attention shifted to a small TV in the clinic's reception area. The local news was reporting on the arrests at Iron and Ash, with a focus on the multiple charges against the biker gang members, including animal cruelty. The report even mentioned that traces of dog fur had been found on one of the men's boots. While official confirmation was still pending, tests were being conducted to confirm the link to animal cruelty. Keanu felt a sense of satisfaction as he watched the report. Justice was being served, and the neighborhood would be safer because of it. What was even more reassuring was that there was no mention of his involvement. The sheriff had kept his promise about discretion. The report continued, highlighting that the owner of Iron and Ash was under investigation, and the bar would be closed pending further inquiry. The thought of positive changes in the neighborhood brought a small measure of comfort to Keanu as he turned his attention back to Buddy. As Keanu prepared to leave the clinic, he felt a complex mix of emotions. The day had been an exhausting roller coaster of fear, anger, and now relief. But more than that, he felt an unexpected bond with Buddy, a bond that went beyond the script. They'd been through something real together, something that would undoubtedly deepen their on-screen chemistry. With one final pat for Buddy and a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Harper and her team, Keanu stepped out into the cool evening air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, adjusting schedules, reshooting scenes, and ensuring Buddy's continued recovery. But for now, he was content knowing that they had overcome a significant hurdle together. As Keanu made his way back to the hotel, his thoughts drifted to the events of the day. The streets of Brooklyn Heights felt different now, as though the resolution at Iron and Ash had shifted the very atmosphere of the neighborhood. Keanu couldn't help but reflect on how this experience had tested not only his acting but his courage and determination in real life. The simple walk that had started with Buddy to help him get into character had quickly turned into a fight for Buddy's life. And in the end, it wasn't just about performing a role. It was about protecting the dog that had become his companion. Keanu's phone buzzed as he neared his hotel. It was the producer, and he answered the call, taking a deep breath. The producer's voice was filled with concern, but also frustration. "How's Buddy?" the producer asked, the tension in his tone clear. Keanu gave a concise update, emphasizing Buddy's positive recovery. The producer sighed. "This is going to set us back. We'll need to adjust the shooting schedule and probably move some of your scenes without Buddy to the front." Keanu nodded, understanding the need for adjustments, but his priority was clear. "I know, but Buddy's health comes first. We can't rush his recovery." The producer paused, then softened. "You're right. We'll make it work. The vet says he should be ready to return in a few days." Keanu reassured the producer that they would follow the vet's instructions for Buddy's care and recovery. The producer agreed to reschedule the necessary scenes and thanked Keanu for his understanding. As Keanu ended the call and stepped into the hotel lobby, he received a text from Sheriff Hank Morrison. It read, "Operation successful. All suspects in custody. Evidence secured. Your involvement remains confidential. Well done, Keanu." A small smile crept onto Keanu's face as he read the message. The sheriff had handled everything efficiently, and Keanu's involvement had remained private. It was reassuring to know that the threat to Buddy and the neighborhood had been neutralized without compromising Keanu's privacy or the film production. The day might have been long, but it had brought an unexpected sense of closure. Keanu had faced down a difficult situation, protected his companion, and helped ensure that those responsible for the harm would face justice. His journey with Buddy was far from over, and tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Keanu felt a quiet sense of relief. As he settled into his hotel room, the weight of the day began to lift. His thoughts returned to Buddy, his loyal co-star, and the genuine trust that had formed between them. Tomorrow they would return to the set, but tonight Keanu allowed himself to rest. Tomorrow would come with new scenes to shoot, but for now, he could breathe easy knowing Buddy was on the path to recovery. The following morning, as Keanu arrived at the clinic, a sense of unease lingered in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was the result of the harrowing events from the previous day or the anticipation of what would come next, but there was a heaviness that couldn't be shaken. When he walked in, Dr. Harper was waiting for him with a tired but genuine smile, a sign that things were looking up. "Mr. Reeves," she greeted him warmly. "I'm happy to report that Buddy is stabilizing. The antidotes and supportive care have been effective. He's already responding well to the treatment." Keanu felt a wave of relief wash over him. That's such a relief. What's the next step? Dr. Harper led him to Buddy's recovery area. As they approached, Keanu saw Buddy lying comfortably on a soft bed, several monitors attached to him. Despite the tubes and wires, Buddy's tail gave a weak wag when he saw Keanu, and the actor felt his heart swell. "Hey, Buddy," Keanu whispered, kneeling to meet the dog's eyes. "You're going to be okay. We've got the bad guys." The reassurance in his voice was for both of them. Dr. Harper smiled at the bond between them. "If all goes well, Buddy should be able to go home tomorrow. We'll need to keep him under observation, but he's responding well. He'll be on medications, mainly for nausea and liver support, and a special diet to help with his recovery." Keanu nodded, mentally noting everything. "I'll be here first thing tomorrow," he promised. "My hotel is close by, so I can be here quickly if there are any changes." As they continued to discuss Buddy's care, Keanu's attention drifted to the small TV in the clinic's reception area. The local news was reporting on the biker gang's arrests at Iron and Ash, specifically highlighting the charges of animal cruelty. The report mentioned that traces of dog fur had been found on one of the suspects' boots, with tests underway to confirm it. Keanu felt a sense of justice welling up inside him as he watched the report. The threat to Buddy and the neighborhood was being neutralized. What was even more reassuring was that there was no mention of his involvement. Sheriff Hank had kept his word, and Keanu's role in the matter remained private. The news went on to say that the owner of Iron and Ash was under investigation, and the bar was temporarily closed for further inquiry. This news only confirmed what Keanu had hoped, that the events of the previous day would bring positive change to the community. A sense of satisfaction settled in him as he turned his focus back to Buddy, who was making steady progress. As Keanu stepped out of the clinic, the weight of the previous days seemed to lift slightly, though the events were still fresh in his mind. The sense of relief was palpable, but a part of him couldn't forget everything that had transpired. There was a bond between him and Buddy now, something more than just a co-star relationship. They had faced a real life-or-death situation together, and Keanu couldn't help but reflect on how this experience would deepen their chemistry on screen. With a final look at Buddy, who was resting peacefully, Keanu walked into the cool evening air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, like adjusting the shooting schedule and ensuring Buddy's full recovery. But for now, he could breathe easier knowing that Buddy was out of danger. They had made it through the storm together, and that meant more than anything. As he made his way back to his hotel, Keanu noticed the streets of Brooklyn Heights had a different feel. The tension of the past day had faded, replaced by a quiet sense of resolution. It was as if the neighborhood itself had breathed a sigh of relief. Keanu couldn't help but think about how the walk he'd taken with Buddy, which had started as a simple task to help get into character, had turned into something far more profound. The streets he'd rushed through just hours earlier now seemed different, calmer, with a new sense of purpose. This ordeal had tested not just his acting skills, but his real-life courage and determination. Keanu couldn't deny that it had changed something within him. As he neared his hotel, his phone buzzed. The name of the producer appeared on the screen. Keanu answered, taking a deep breath before speaking. The producer's voice was a mix of concern and frustration. "How's Buddy?" the producer asked, his tone heavy with expectation. Keanu gave him a brief but detailed update. "He's doing better, stable now. He should be fine with continued care." The producer sighed, relieved but still practical. "This is going to set us back, though. We need to adjust the shooting schedule. Some of your scenes without Buddy might need to be moved to the front." Keanu nodded. "I get it, but Buddy's health comes first. We can't rush his recovery." The producer hesitated before softening. "You're right. We'll make it work. The vet says Buddy should be ready in a few days." Keanu agreed, confirming that they would follow the vet's instructions to ensure Buddy's full recovery. They discussed rescheduling a few scenes, and the producer assured Keanu they would accommodate the changes. After ending the call, Keanu stepped into the hotel lobby. His phone buzzed again, this time a text from Sheriff Hank Morrison. "Operation successful. All suspects are in custody. Evidence secured. Your involvement remains confidential. Well done, Keanu." A smile played on Keanu's lips as he read the message. Sheriff Hank had handled everything efficiently and kept Keanu's involvement out of the public eye, which was exactly what Keanu had hoped for. The threat to Buddy and to the community had been taken care of. Keanu felt a deep sense of gratitude and relief, knowing that justice had been served. The day's events, though exhausting and terrifying, had ultimately led to positive change. As he reflected on it all, Keanu knew one thing for certain. His journey with Buddy was far from over. Tomorrow they would return to the set, but for tonight he could rest easy knowing that the worst was behind them. The next morning, Keanu made his way to the clinic with a sense of unease still lingering in the pit of his stomach. The weight of everything that had happened over the past day hadn't quite lifted, and the final chapter of this ordeal felt like it was still unfolding. When he entered the clinic, Dr. Harper was waiting for him with a soft, reassuring smile, a sign that Buddy's condition was improving. "Mr. Reeves," she greeted him warmly. "I'm happy to tell you that Buddy is doing much better. The treatment is working, and he's stabilizing well." Keanu felt a wave of relief wash over him. "That's a huge relief. What's next?" Dr. Harper led him to Buddy's recovery area. There, Keanu saw Buddy resting on a soft bed, various monitors attached to him. Despite the wires and tubes, Buddy's tail gave a faint wag when he saw Keanu, and the sight filled the actor with hope. "Hey, Buddy," Keanu said softly, kneeling beside the dog. "You're going to be okay. We've got everything under control." Dr. Harper smiled at the bond between them. "As long as there are no complications, Buddy should be able to go home tomorrow. We'll keep monitoring him for the next 24 hours, but he's doing well. He's on a special diet and will continue with some medications to aid his recovery." Keanu nodded, making sure to absorb every detail. "I'll be here first thing tomorrow. My hotel is close by, so I can be here if anything changes." As they discussed Buddy's care, Keanu's attention was drawn to a small TV in the reception area. The local news was covering the biker gang's arrests, focusing on the charges of animal cruelty. They even mentioned traces of dog fur found on one of the men's boots, with tests underway to confirm the link. Keanu felt a sense of justice settle over him as he watched the report. The bad guys were being held accountable, and the neighborhood was a little safer because of it. It was comforting to see that the sheriff had kept his promise. Keanu's role in the situation was kept private. The news went on to report that the owner of Iron and Ash was under investigation, and the bar was being temporarily closed for further inquiry. This only reinforced Keanu's belief that things were moving in the right direction, and that real change was coming to the area. Keanu's focus returned to Buddy, who was still recovering, but he felt more optimistic than ever. The worst was over, and now it was all about making sure Buddy was back to his old self. As Keanu stepped out of the clinic, a sense of calm washed over him. The chaos of the past few days was slowly starting to fade, replaced by the quiet relief of knowing Buddy was on the mend. However, the weight of what had happened was still there, lingering in the back of his mind. The connection he had formed with Buddy went beyond their work on set. They had shared an experience that bonded them in a way nothing else could. He gave Buddy one last look before walking out into the evening air. There would be more hurdles to overcome tomorrow, rescheduling scenes, ensuring Buddy's full recovery, and getting back to work, but for tonight he could let go of the tension. They had made it through together, and that was all that mattered. As Keanu made his way back to his hotel, he couldn't help but notice that the streets of Brooklyn Heights felt different. The heavy tension from the previous day had lifted, replaced by an unspoken sense of resolution. It was as though the neighborhood itself had breathed a sigh of relief. Keanu couldn't help but reflect on how much this experience had changed him, not just as an actor, but as a person. What had begun as a simple walk with Buddy to get into character had turned into a fight for his life, and that experience had tested something deeper within him. The streets felt quieter now, almost more serene. Keanu's thoughts drifted back to the ordeal, how it had started, and how it had ultimately shifted something inside of him. What was meant to be an ordinary day had turned into something extraordinary, something that would stay with him long after the filming ended. As he neared his hotel, Keanu's phone buzzed. It was the producer. Taking a steadying breath, Keanu answered. "How's Buddy doing?" The producer's voice came through, a mix of concern and frustration evident. Keanu quickly gave him an update. "He's stable now. The treatment's working. He should be fine." The producer sighed with relief, but still had a practical concern. "This is going to set us back. We need to shift some of your scenes without Buddy to the front of the schedule." Keanu understood the need for adjustments. Of course, but Buddy's health has to come first. We can't rush his recovery. There was a pause on the other end of the line before the producer spoke again, his tone softening. "You're right. We'll make it work. The vet said he should be good in a few days." Keanu nodded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. They discussed rescheduling the scenes, and the producer agreed to prioritize Buddy's recovery. After the call ended, Keanu stepped into the hotel lobby. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Sheriff Hank Morrison. "Operation successful. All suspects in custody. Evidence secured. Your involvement remains confidential. Well done, Keanu." Keanu smiled, feeling a sense of reassurance. The sheriff had handled everything with efficiency and kept Keanu's name out of the public eye. The threat had been neutralized, and Buddy would be safe. The relief was undeniable, knowing that the situation had been resolved. While the day had been filled with fear and uncertainty, it had led to something positive, a sense of justice and security. Keanu could finally put the worst of it behind him and look ahead to what was next. His journey with Buddy wasn't over, but they had made it through the most challenging part.